Hi, it is another video for Sacred Uprising Institute. We are starting today at 11 o'clock, so I'm a little bit of ahead of time, but I thought it would be good just to get some things set up and also to do our announcements. So just bear with me while we start preparing. The video will start at 11 o'clock. In the meantime, let me just do a few announcements for you. Sacred Uprising has a new logo. We have Christopher Lee, who is one of our teachers and speakers who is a part of the Institute and will be part of the conference. He is gifted with what he calls it is a soul portrait. So he meditates on you, and the beauty that comes forth from that is actually the logo. When he meditated on me is actually the logo that you now see that is not only on my Facebook, but you can also see the logo on our 3 Facebook pages. That includes Sacred Uprising Conference, and Sacred Uprising Institute. The other place that you will see it is on YouTube, which brings me to my next announcement. We have many new videos that are up on YouTube. We are working diligently to try to get all of the videos that we've done, to get them uploaded, put them on YouTube, and they will all be on there by end of day on Friday. That being said, I have a very exciting announcement to make, is that we want you to subscribe. So if you can't catch us live here on Facebook, you can go to YouTube and be notified, if you're a subscriber, when we've uploaded a video. For the next week from today, which is Wednesday, to next Friday, whoever subscribes, I will be picking one fortunate person as the winner of a beautiful crystal that we have. So don't miss out on that opportunity. We really want subscribers. We really want to get God's voice out there. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. The other announcement is that we will be having our website will be completed a week from Friday. There will be some things that are still kind of iffy and we're still playing with, but overall the whole new look and feel of the website will be completed a week from Friday. And in addition to that, it looks like our conference is going to be in September, mid-September. We're just finalizing the details, and I cannot wait to make the announcement where it will be, the venue, show you pictures of it, and also we will have that advertised not only on all of our Facebook pages, mine included, but we will also be having information about that on our website. And our website is which I really didn't need to say that, did I? sacreduprising.com. You can also go to Sacred Uprising Conference or Sacred Uprising Institute, and it will all take you back to Sacred Uprising. So let me just introduce to you what I'm going to be talking about today. Today is called The House My Father Built. It was 4 years ago in July my dad passed away, and today happens to be his birthday. And as a daughter, I always write something about him, but today I wanted to do a video in honor of him. However, it's a little bit different from that. I want to really focus on the broken parent-child relationship. And mine was broken, and it was wounded, and it needed healing, and it needed forgiveness, and it needed acceptance for everything that happened and how it was a point of transformation in my life. So I'm a big believer that whatever happens in our life before we're born, we call it into us. And I feel that way about my parents, about my dad, that I called it in because I needed it to be who I am today. So that is truly what today is about. But I wrote a paper a few months after he passed away, and I'm going to share some of that with you. And then we'll talk about the healing for a parent-child relationship. So shortly after my dad passed away, I went and visited a childhood friend that I had known for 42 years. Her name is Julie. And Julie is a beautiful, very gifted writer. And Julie had written something, and she had made a statement. And the statement that she made in this article that she wrote was, it's something to the effect that she was looking at tiles on a building, and on those tiles had people's names, and it had the dates they lived, the date they were born and the date that they passed away. And those people had been people that had donated many years ago for the building. And these people, she said, and I quote, "Their lives were broken down to the lowest denominator, which was their name." And it really hit home for me because my dad had just passed away. And I realized that my dad's life could very well be broken down to the lowest denominator of his name, which is Lawrence Dale LaCroix. My dad is buried and his tombstone is there. His name is on his tombstone and the dates he lived are there too. But it won't tell his true story. It doesn't tell of his greatness or the love that was in his heart, his brilliance, his intellect, his virtue, his integrity. He never and never will be just the sum of his name and the dates that he lived. He was my dad, and he was so much more. You see, he built a house. The house that my father built can withstand any storm. In fact, that house has been hit over and over again by storms that would shatter most homes, and yet it still stands. In fact, that home has a forgiveness and a love for the hail and the high winds that has tried to destroy it. And when the sun shines through, it still accepts its warmth for all those who enter its doors. The house that my father built, it's also filled with love. It has many stories and depths that some can't understand. The basement is a solid foundation. The cornerstone that my father placed was love. Radical grace flows from the attic to the basement. God is within this home. Happiness flows throughout the ductwork. My father chose to finance this house with God. And then God gave him the deed to the home. My father then gave it back to God in worship and thankfulness for the house that he was allowed to finance. You can feel God within the walls. It stands strong because God is the nails. It is the plaster. It is the concrete, the foundation. It is the windows. It is even the porch and the beautiful landscape. The house that my father built has been well manicured. By outward appearances, you would see the beauty of the paint, manicured lawn, and trimmed trees. The flowers add a sense of joy, and the birds welcome you. There are those who are like-minded, will feel welcomed, will feel embraced, and will be able to sit and bask in its front yards. The house that my father built has also many, many flaws. Many tears have been cried over this house, but it rises above the flaws with the beauty of the flaws. It's its character. It is its foundation. It's what makes it so beautiful. There's been a few floods, a few cracks in the walls, a few water stains on the ceiling, a few misplaced artwork on the walls, a few new roofs throughout the years, and even a new porch. It adds to the character of the home. The house was almost demolished at one point, but since God had the deed, he chose to keep the house, to renovate and restructure. There are times that my father has cried over the flaws. There's times that my dad screamed within the hallways with frustration and sorrow. He even kneeled on the porch begging God to save the house from utter destruction. And oh, my dad loved that house, flaws and all. And in the end, it was only love that my dad saw. And in the end, it was only love that my dad demonstrated for that house. And in the end, it's only love that ever was. You can still hear the echoes of my father's voice throughout the rooms. You can hear him in the silence. You sense him around each and every corner. You see him in the photos, feel him within the walls, and know his imprint will live on forever. The house that my father built is one of the legacies that he left behind. My father is so much more than the name Lawrence Dale LaCroix. He is so much more than the dash between his years, and he will never be broken down to the lowest denominator of his name. Not while I'm alive. I won't allow it. I will shout his legacy to all within ear's reach. He has a house which he built to prove that he existed. My Father, he built this house. He loved this house. He devoted his life to this house. He gave this house his love. He gave this house his name. My house, the house that my Father built, is me, Trisha Ann LaCroix. No one can take away my birthright. It's rightfully mine. Hear his voice through my voice. Feel his strength. Endure his hard-headedness. You can't tame him. Don't even try. Honor him. Because you see, my dad changed lives. He lived what he believed. He was passionate for what he stood behind. Good, bad, or indifferent, he is the force to be reckoned with. He still is a good man. Many, including me, didn't understand him. Many shook their heads, including me, at his beliefs. Many more, though, knew of his love, including me. He was generous. He was loving. He was brilliant. You couldn't deny his integrity. You couldn't deny his faithfulness. You couldn't see his smile without smiling with him. I had the honor to see him receive his reward after he passed away. I saw his smile. I felt him put his hands on my face, give me a big kiss, and just the joy and love that was on his face. I saw him in the purity of all that he ever hoped to be. I am proud of my father, Lawrence LaCroix. He watches over the house that he built, and he is a protective warrior of its land and ruins. This house will carry his name and honor his legacy until the end of an eternity of eternities. I am the house my father built, and I stand in his honor. I love you, Dad. And I carry your heart in my heart. So I want to talk about the wounded relationship between a parent and a child. Because while my love for my dad transcends any transgressions that he ever made, there was many years that our relationship was broken. My dad was controlling. He was physically abusive to my siblings, mostly mentally and emotional abusive to me. His love was very conditional. I had to be a mirror to whatever he wanted me to be while growing up. It was a relationship with him that I did not like my dad. And I will honestly, when I was a child, he traveled constantly, and I used to pray that he would never make it home. And then in 2005, my relationship with my father changed because my dad changed. And he started becoming loving. He started being more in touch with his emotions. He began to reach out to me in very loving, father-like ways that he had never done before. He began to be the man that I would run to when I needed support. And he was extraordinarily supportive. Emotionally, mentally. He was loving. He was caring. He changed. And but the truth, where things really shifted, my father in 2009, he fell down the stairs, and he had to have brain surgery. Unknown to us, he also had Parkinson's, and he had dementia. He was on the onset of dementia at the time as well. And my mother, my mother is another issue. She doesn't want anything to do with me, and I'm very much at peace, and I'm grateful that that's the way it is. But she didn't tell me that my dad had fallen. I found out through Julie, who I spoke about at the beginning of this video. Julie had let me know that she saw my dad in ICU, and she was so sorry that what was going on in my family. And I said, "What do you mean my dad's in the hospital?" I didn't know. And I found out. I contacted my mother. I was very angry that nobody told me, and it had happened like a week before. And what ended up happening is that I told my mom I was flying in. I was living in, gosh, I think it was here. I believe I was living here in Las Vegas at the time. And my mother said, don't come. You can't see your dad. I came anyways. And she ended up moving him from that hospital to, and when I got there, he wasn't there, and it took me all night to find him. He was about 30 miles away, and I found him, and I went to go see him. My dad was in a coma, and when my brother Ron went with me, and I went into the room. He was non-responsive to everybody, from what I was told, and when I went in there, I put my hand in his, and I was sobbing, and I said, Dad, it's me. It's Trisha. I'm here. And my dad was trying to open his eyes, and he was swinging his arms around, and he kept mouthing, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, nonstop. I was there probably 2 hours nonstop. He kept saying over and over, I love you. My brother ran and got the nurses, and the nurses came in saying, he's never done this before. He's in a coma. He should not be doing this. But my dad's love transcended his condition. My mother kept me away from him for 3 years. And in 2012, I received an email from her stating that she can no longer keep my dad from me, that he was out of a coma. He was couldn't function. He couldn't walk. He couldn't do anything. And he was on bed. He was at home being taken care of by a nurse, but he kept asking for me. And my mother said, finally, I can't keep him from you anymore. You can come see him. And but this is the criteria for you even to walk into my home. So I went to go see my father, and we both cried. It was a beautiful reunion. And my mother wouldn't leave me alone with him, but she had to leave to go do something for a moment. And I whispered to my dad, I said, Dad, I tried to get to you sooner, but Mom wouldn't let me see you. And I wanted him to know. My mom came back in, and she made a snide remark about my hair, how much she hated it. And my dad, for the first time in his life, stood up for me and said, leave her alone. My dad, within a month or a few weeks, was taken to a nursing home, and I was very blessed to have the opportunity to move to Chicago. And with that move, one of the blessings from it was that I got to see my dad on a regular basis. So I would go see him 1 or 2 times a week, as I lived just a few minutes from the nursing home. And that is when the healing began. So the forgiveness had already happened. I was at peace. I was fine with everything that had happened. In fact, I had a forgiveness about it because it made me who I was. I was grateful that he was hard-headed. I was grateful that he was so staunch in his beliefs that we couldn't agree on, because it made me strong. It made me strong with the way he raised me, because I was able to withstand many storms. I was able to stand up for victims of the abuse of his church. And even though that there were death threats, even though that I was being attacked in many, many different ways, even though I was spoken ill about, even though my mom looked at me and shook her fingers in my face and told me that she wanted nothing to do with me, it didn't faze me, because my dad made me strong. So as the next year and a half, I got to have this beautiful relationship with him. I'll never forget, it was one day my dad was in his at the nursing home in his wheelchair, and he looked at me and he said, "You're so pretty." I was like 43 years old. That was the first time my dad had ever said that to me. Another time he looked at me and he said, "I'm so proud of you." Again, the first time he had ever said that to me. And it healed. There's a lot of healing in those words. And if I could say anything to fathers, embrace your little girls. Tell them that they're pretty. Tell your children you're proud of them, because they need it. Because it molds them into who they are, who they will be. I know this because I didn't get it till I was in my 40s. I was honest with my dad during that time. He couldn't really talk, but I told him about my stand against his church and his religion. And I told my dad, I said, "Dad, you may not understand it now, but one day when you cross over, you'll understand and you'll be proud." And what was really, my dad, the way that we were raised, I had to dress a certain way. I had to mirror everything that my parents wanted me to be for them to accept me and for them to welcome me into their loving arms, or quote unquote conditional love. But when he was ill, he didn't care. I was still respectful on my terms with how I dressed. But he didn't care how I dressed when I went to go see him, because you know what? Love was all that mattered. He was there. That's all he cared about. He didn't care about my political beliefs, because we did not agree with one another. But guess what? We found out in the end, love was all that mattered. We didn't argue about, the science of things or the spiritual, spiritual beliefs. We didn't argue about, whether it's political, like guns or all the different things, the way that I dressed. We didn't argue about any of that, because love was all that mattered. And that's what my dad taught me in the end. That why do we argue about these things? Why don't we find that common bond and love that place instead of just focusing on what makes us different? Because love is all that should have ever mattered. I look back at my life, and I'm sure my dad was looking back on his life, even though he couldn't really speak, and he was looking back going, why did we argue? Why did we fight about that? Does it really matter? Because it didn't. In the end, he just wanted his Trisha, and I just wanted my daddy. That's all I wanted. Love, yes, Terry, love is all that mattered. I used to say something to him every time I would leave him at the nursing home, and there is a poem by E.E. Cummings called it's about your heart, and what I would say to him, I would say the poem to him, and I said, Dad, I would take his hand and I'd put it on my heart, and I said, Dad, I'm carrying your heart in my heart. And then I would touch his chest and say, and you're carrying my heart in yours. And we would say that every single time. And it got to the point when he couldn't speak, I would say, Dad, where's my heart? And he would touch his chest, and I'd say, and where's your heart? And he would touch mine. The last day I saw my dad alive, I went to him at his nursing home. I was back. I had moved back here to Vegas, and I was there visiting. And for some reason, I felt called to start taking him down memory lane. And so I started reliving it with him, talking about when he took me to the park when I was 12 months old and was pushing me in the swing. And I thanked him for everything. I thanked him for being such a good dad. I told him I was so proud of him. All the memories that I could ever think of when I was little at 4 years old. For Halloween, he had put his overcoat over his head and a top hat on, and he took my hand, and we were going into my favorite restaurant, and he said, I want you to say to the lady when we get there, lady, will you feed my monster? And we got in, and I looked at my dad, and I still remember it, and he would tease me about it my whole life and say, Daddy, I'd be embarrassed. And so we didn't do that. So I started taking him down memory lane. And I spent a couple hours with him, and at the end I said, Dad, I'm carrying your heart in my heart, and you're carrying mine in yours. I went to go see a friend for dinner, and she's a beautiful spiritual woman, and she said, Trisha, she said, if you want to help your dad pass over, you need to walk him down memory lane. And I said, oh, okay, because I was just doing that earlier today. I said, however, I feel led that I need to go back and see him tonight. And she goes, well, then you should. So it was about 10:30. I went back at night, and I went back to the nursing home, and my dad was sleeping, and I sat down in his bed, and I woke him up, and again, he couldn't talk. Sometimes he couldn't even open his eyes, but he opened, and I told him, Dad, you have to open your eyes. You have to look at me, and he looked at me, and I started talking to him about how proud I was of him, how much I loved him, how grateful I am that he chose me as he adopted me. He gave me his name when I was in 4th grade, and I went through all those beautiful memories with him. And I told him that I loved him, and I told him to carry my heart in his heart, and I would carry his in mine. And I also told him, Dad, it's okay, you can go. It's okay. I'm okay now. I'm strong enough now. You've healed me. You can go. I turned around and walked away, and I heard this noise. And I turned and looked, and my dad, who could barely open his eyes, he didn't move. His mouth never even closed. He just always had his mouth open. And my dad was literally trying to sit up in bed. His face was bright red, and his eyes were bulging. And he was calling me back. And I ran back over to him, and I put my hand under his head. I said, Dad, it's okay, lay back down. He laid down, and I looked at him. I said, Dad, I love you too. I said, I know what you want to say to me. I then told my dad everything that he wanted to say to me. I said, Dad, I know you love me. I know that I'm your sunshine. I know you're sorry for our relationship. I know you're sorry for where you made mistakes. I know you love me infinitely and that you will guide me. I kissed my dad goodbye and told him to go to sleep. And that was the last time I saw him alive. Love was all that should have ever mattered. Love, forgiveness is not just the first stage. And I had a beautiful conversation with Bliss this morning. The first stage is forgiveness, yes, but true love, unconditional love, which is a shame that we even have to call it unconditional because it's just love. Agape. It's about acceptance. Acceptance for all that happened because we were creators. We co-created the universe and the life that we now live. My dad, I needed him. I needed him to be who he is, to the one that chose church over his family, that chose his church family over his grandchildren, that hurt us over and over and over. I needed that because it made me strong and it made me be independent and it made me stand true in my beliefs. Because as an adult, I decided nobody was ever going to tell me how to live, that I was strong enough to say, this is me, accept me or not. I'm not changing. Because of my dad. He was one of my greatest teachers. He molded me into who I am today. So when you hear me speak, part of what I say, my inflection in my voice, the grace that I give, the love, the forgiveness, you're seeing my dad. You're seeing Lawrence Dale LaCroix. While he was not blood related, he was my dad. So there is hope. You can know forgiveness. You can look at your parents that have hurt you and wounded you, and you can understand they too are human. Give them some compassion, because it's only people that have been hurt that hurt others. So forgive them from that standpoint, that none of us are perfect, that we're all just walking each other home. And that while they molded us into who we are, as adults, we have the opportunity, we have the choice whether we are going to be victims or victorious. We get to take our life back and say, this is who I am today, but it is my responsibility to be who I am tomorrow. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the pain. I am grateful for how he raised me. I am grateful that he taught me love. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to be the loving, forgiving, and acceptance of what is without him. He is the catalyst, one of the catalysts that brought me to where I am today. Now, if you want to talk about my mother, who still lives in Illinois, we don't speak. I'm not angry with her. The last time I talked to her was right after my father passed. In fact, my mother's anger for how I made a stand, she wouldn't even let me go to my father's funeral. And it's okay. It's okay. It hurt. It broke my heart, but it was okay. Because it just is. I got to say goodbye to my dad for a year and a half. I got to make my peace with him. So it's okay. Nobody can take that away from me. I don't have a single thing of my dad's. That has not been given to me, and what I did have was taken away from me. I have nothing. but I have my dad's heart in my heart, and that is worth more than any earthly possession. So if I have any hope or for any of you, it is not only to forgive your parents and forgive your children, but to understand and accept that they too are human. And as Rumi said, we are just walking each other home. So thank you for watching, and thank you for honoring my dad's name today, Lawrence Dale LaCroix, because he will never be the sum of his name. And his greatness, his love, his compassion, his integrity, and his life and his heart resides within his daughter. So thank you.